Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you all to the webinar of Accessible Sri Lanka Tourism Together Towards the Global Best, organized by the postgraduate students of Tourism Economics and Hotel Management of Department of Economics, Faculty of Arts of University of Colombo. Today, we have three respected industry professionals with us. Ms. Kimarli Fernando, Chairperson, Sri Lanka Tourism; Ms. Gitanjali Chakravarthy, General Manager, Hilton Yala Resort; and Mr. James Exton, who is joining with us from UK, and he is the CEO of Access the Globe. Thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedule to participate in our event. It is an immense pleasure to have you all with us today. Today, we will be discussing about accessible tourism, which is an ongoing endeavor to ensure that the destinations and its services are accessible to all people, regardless of their physical and intellectual limitations, disabilities, and age. So behind all these activities, we have this person who is always encouraging us, was shaping and motivating our ideas to bring out the best output of this project. And he is none other than Professor Suranga De Silva, the coordinator of tourism study programs at University of Colombo. Dear sir, now I cordially invite you to address the audience.
Good afternoon. I'm indeed a great honor and privilege to this valuable webinar on accessible tourism together towards the global best practices. It is indeed grateful for all the resource persons, those who are making the valuable, so insightful contribution for this webinar. Ms. Kimarli Fernando, Chairperson of Sri Lanka Tourism, thank you very much for your valuable participations. I hope that your contribution would be immensely helpful for us to develop the outcome of expected from this webinar. Mr. James Exton, CEO, Exton to Globe. So thank you very much for being internationally very valuable contribution makers of this accessible tourism. I think your valuable insights and thought-provoking idea would be very much important. Ms. Gitanjali Chakravarthy, I'm so proud of you. At the same time, your contribution is immensely helpful for our students to develop the expected outcome of this webinar. So, dear students, thank you very much for your sacrification, and dear participants, your participation is very meaningful for us at this webinar on accessible Sri Lanka tourism together towards global best practices. I would like to highlight the major objective of this webinar. We know that our tourism study program is to be industry interactive and application-oriented learning approach. So we are believing that any study program conducted in our university must be beneficial to the industry, and it should be industry interactive and application-oriented, result-driven study program. In this expectation, I hope to say that expected outcome of this webinar is three aspects. We are not focusing on too much on the output or our input. We are focusing on the outcome. Outcome is the valuable contribution that can create the industry's benefit and the country's development. So in that case, we are expecting that three major outcomes coming through this webinar. One, one expected outcome is an effective awareness creating for the industry stakeholders for their decision making. Second expected outcome is develop a brief policy paper for the policymakers and practitioners to make Sri Lanka towards a more accessible destination to the world. Third one is we are expecting that training program to develop the training program to enhance the hospitality for differently able visitors and tourists, those who are coming to Sri Lanka. So it is very, very important that it has been clearly evident from the global best practices that tourism industry's prosperity and sustainability will mainly determine only through the creative decision making, innovative management, and effective marketing and responsible leadership. So this can only be achieved through the professional excellence of the employee of the industry and their analytical decision-making power. So therefore, Ms. Kimarli Fernando, thank you very much for accepting our invitations. I know that you are so busy and you have been involved in different activities. Yesterday also you had you were the chief guest at the University of Colombo. So you actually making empowered the University of Colombo being represented from the Sri Lanka tourism. So thank you very much for your contribution. At the same time, Mr. James Exton, thank you very much for your contribution. And Ms. Gitanjali Chakravarthy, we are looking forward to see your valuable insight and creative and thought-provoking ideas to develop the outcome report of this student's assignment. This is actually student assignment. We have more than 55 students of our postgraduate diploma batch. They have been given different tasks. This is the one task one group is doing. So you are making so meaningful this students webinar. Thank you very much. I would like to thank everybody, those who behind this valuable event. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Professor. So, without taking much time, let's move to the webinar. And we have our colleague, Sri Vijayaratna, who will be the moderator for the webinar today. Sri, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nipuni, and good afternoon, everybody again. And we would like to welcome you again to this webinar. Today, we are discussing about a very important and very uncommonly touched topic. It's accessible Sri Lanka tourism together towards the global best practices. And as the honorable panel of this discussion, we have invited the chairperson of Sri Lanka Tourism, Ms. Kimarli Fernando, and she will express her valuable ideas regarding the hospitality and tourism industry development towards the accessible tourism in Sri Lanka. And at the same time, we have invited Mr. James Exton, CEO, Acess the Globe, United Kingdom, and he will be sharing his own travel experiences, which lays over 20 years and comes to Sri Lanka, and his ideas of promoting accessible tourism in Sri Lanka. And finally, we were happy to invite Hilton Yala Resort General Manager, Ms. Gitanjali Chakravarthy, and she will be sharing her thoughts about differently able guest handling education and its gaps and its importance. And in the same time, I have a news for you all as well. And if you have any questions to raise, you can put them into our chat box, same with your name, and we will be raising questions on behalf of you. And ladies and gentlemen, without taking much time, we are happy to move to the session. Ms. Kimarli Fernando, I would like to take you onto the screen. Ma'am, my first question goes to you.
Sure.
Good afternoon, ma'am, and we warmly welcome you to our webinar. And as my first question in this webinar, so I would like to ask, as the chairperson of Sri Lanka Tourism, what do you think about opening up our hands to welcoming and accommodating differently able tourists to Sri Lanka from all around the world, and how it impacts to our Sri Lanka tourism industry image?
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you. The accessible world is basically an inclusive world. And I think that Sri Lanka tourism and Sri Lanka in particular has really a long way to go. And I'm sure the next speakers would highlight their experiences and how there's so much more to be done. If you look at access tourism, it's basically something to ensure what we do to ensure tourist destinations with the product, the services are accessible to all people, regardless of their physical or intellectual limitations, disabilities, age. So it encompasses the private sector as well as, of course, government, the public sector. And operating tourist locations, the transportation, it encompasses really a lot. Let me just switch this off. Accessibility will impact all of us, actually, eventually. I think we should realize that. Think about somebody who's an old person with a bad ankle, or a parent, a mother or father pushing a buggy, who's also in a way has issues, or a tourist if he's dragging a bag or something like this. So all that encompasses this. And the principle of it and the philosophy based is to design something which is inclusive, that everybody is able to access, to not only access, but experience and enjoy. It is not only access. So from a regulator or tourism authority point of view, it is an opportunity for us. There is so much we can do. Because exponential growth of tourism over the last few decades offer amazing opportunities for our country, our socio-economic development, the job creation, as you know, all that. So we must create an environment that everybody, all tourists, can enjoy. There are various guidelines that have been put in place, but the spirit of it, I think, is not understood maybe all the time. And so we need, as a regulator, to make that change. And we need the private sector and the citizens also to buy into this idea, because it's a huge market potential for Sri Lanka going forward. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Then I would like to ask, will there be any special arrangements to increase the differently able traveler visits to Sri Lanka in this new normal situation, ma'am?
Yeah, we need to first identify who they are. So the WHO in their world report, I think, mentioned that there are estimated 1 billion people in the world with some form of disability. So that's the market for you. So that constitutes about 15% of the world's population, right? Of whom about nearly 200 million experience considerable difficulty in functioning. So worldwide, the growth rate of people with disability or with special needs or differently abled or whatever is higher than the growth population in other areas. This is also due to the aging population globally, chronic health conditions, and so on. So what do we do to change that is not only regulation, but I think that we need to have kind of a, I mean, I'm so pleased that you're having this and as a university students, because exactly the youth speaking about this. And I think maybe our culture also, we don't really embrace somebody with disabilities as well as we should. And I think that there are thought leaders who need to speak up. Because, you know, you can have a disability when you're born, you can have a traffic accident, it could be a natural disaster, it could be because of your eating habits, it could be due to abuse of substance, it could be a many different reasons. I mean, a pregnant lady has a disability temporarily. For example, a child could have had an accident, for example. So these are areas that we see as a great potential, not mainly because we need to be creating an inclusive society, really, and also from a tourism perspective.
Okay, ma'am. Then we would like to ask, will there be any your suggestions and policy measures to promote accessible tourism here?
Yes, the promotion, the policies, it's not difficult to find because there are really good policies from the EU, from the UN, from WHO. And so policies we can put, guidelines we can put. But then we also need to get the buy-in of the industry, right? We have regulations, as you already know, which talks about how many rooms for disability access and so on and so on. But there are issues with regards to transportation, for example, you know that. So there are so many areas that not necessarily comes under tourism, but which needs to be embraced and changed. I mean, if you look at somebody with any kind of disability, you will have about 1 or 2 people who are always traveling with them. So there again, so you'll have absolute revenue because of that. The seasonality angle will change, because Sri Lanka is often people say high season, low season. This kind of segment would probably support the low season. It can clearly, no doubt, change the image of the whole destination, really. We saw some data that 70% of Europeans with disabilities have physical and economic possibilities to travel. This is equivalent to about 58 million potential visitors with some form of disability who is in Europe, so you can imagine. And I saw some data in Germany, for example, that people with physical disabilities spend a lot, about 5 billion euros each year on travel. So although the numbers have reduced, and I think Sri Lanka has nowhere reached where it should be. So I think the government needs to be involved in improving the infrastructure, improving the transportation and the services. And I think that, air transport, sea transport, all that, the service, the activities, the attractions, I mean, so many attractions. I mean, Sigiriya may be exception, but most of the others, we should be able to, even Sigiriya, we should be able to, the marketing and the reservation systems, the websites, the whole leisure aspect. I mean, somebody with a disability doesn't want to just go to your hotel, but they want to also have leisure activities. They want to have, you need to develop sort of cultural sort of itineraries related to this segment, actually. So these are areas that we have to work with people, young people like you and experts in the world, how we create a proper guideline that we could implement. And of course, not forgetting the human angle of it, and that to train, and this is something we can get involved, to train the workforce to understand the sensitivities and requirements of this segment of traveler. So that's something that hotels association, hotel school can actually implement pretty soon if we have a good program. And I'm sure we could get some resources and help from people and how to implement a program in this order.
Yes, ma'am. From the student perspective, we also believe that when it comes to the servicing and working in the hotel industry, because we also facing some difficulties when we are dealing and trading to the different level guests. So as our suggestion, we would like to raise the communication skills for the other employees and the students, because the current situation and the practical situation, no one knows even the sign languages and all. So that would be a good option and a good learning that matter to have a concern on. So ma'am, we have a question from our audience, and please let me raise it for you. And Sachinta, he's asking, and how would you encourage tourism stakeholders and investors to promoting and developing accessible tourism for Sri Lanka, especially for the investors and the stakeholders and others?
For the investors, already we have a guideline that they have to adhere to. So that is in terms of regulations, what they have to adhere to. So the wheelchair access, the lifts and what have you. Not a lot of them have been able to adhere to it. Most of the hotels have built their hotels long before the guidelines actually came into effect. So they are struggling with that in terms of the structural changes that they have to make, as well as the financial issues as well. So, whether it's the restaurants, whether it's a public area, whether it's the street, the sidewalk, all that has to be looked at. And I think it has to be kind of an inter-ministerial cooperation involved in this to get it done. So specifically for the investor, we have a guideline. And what we're going to do going forward is highlight hotels that are disability friendly for this segment, so that then when a guest looks out, we would probably have a separate sample logo so that you would know that this is, and we would make itineraries for different types of disabilities. What would be user-friendly for you. So that's already been done, but we need to get the buy-in from more and more hoteliers, restaurant owners, people who give various experiences to get that done.
So thank you so much, ma'am, for your very, very valuable ideas and opinions. And ma'am, we have a very great demand from the audience and they're asking lots of questions. But at the moment, we are running out with the time. But definitely we will be collecting all the questions and we will be forwarding for you to get put our consideration. And we will be taking care of that, ma'am. And thank you so much for joining with us today. And have a good day for you.
Thank you.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are going ahead with our discussion. And secondly, we are moving to Mr. James Exton, the CEO of Accessible Globe, United Kingdom. Sir, may I have you onto the screen, please? So, Mr. James Exton, can I have you onto the screen, please?
You've disabled me, apparently.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, can you see me?
Actually, your video is not appearing, sir.
It's saying that you cannot start your video because your host is disabled it.
Yeah, now we can see you, sir.
Ah, right. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Right. Ayabon, everyone.
Ayabon, sir. And we are happy to have you, and we are really happy to invite you for this event. And sir, we are moving to the first question. And would you like to explain how was your travel experience to Sri Lanka throughout all these 20 years?
Right. Well, I'm a wheelchair user, and I first came to Sri Lanka in 1999. And accessibility was very, very poor. But over the years, it's slowly got better. And then in 2018, when I came, I thought, well, there is so much investment in Sri Lanka. I was seeing hotels and apartments being built in Colombo that I thought maybe it was a good idea to start a company to promote tourism in Sri Lanka. And I know that from my travels all over the world, the biggest problem that a wheelchair user has is finding an accessible hotel, accessible transport, and tourist sites which are wheelchair friendly. In Sri Lanka, the hotels are not of a very high standard. Even when I surveyed maybe 20 hotels in 2018, I found that only several of them had disabled bedrooms. And when I actually inspected those bedrooms, I found that they weren't accessible at all, because although they did have handrails, the handrails were located in the wrong position. The fold-down seats were broken, and there was so much furniture inside the bedroom that a wheelchair user couldn't navigate around the room. So those items that I listed are very cheap to solve. I mean, they could just remove some of the furniture. Handrails in the UK, a handrail is 2,000 rupees. A fold-down shower seat is 4,000 rupees. And when you're thinking about a 4-star hotel in Colombo charging $100 a night. You know, an outlay of 4,000 rupees, capital expenditure, can very easily and quickly be recovered by the hotel. So, you know, accessibility is becoming more of an issue in Sri Lanka, and I've been doing some work with Walkers Tours, and they actually, I helped them introduce a wheelchair accessible vehicle in October 2019. And I couldn't believe that up until then, there hadn't been a wheelchair accessible tourist vehicle in the country. So anyone who is a wheelchair user and they can't walk, and they wanted to go to Asia, they wanted an accessible holiday in Asia, they'd have a look at Sri Lanka and see, well, Sri Lanka's got climate, culture, history, food, everything. But when I arrive in the airport, there is no way for me to get to a hotel. So they would immediately cross Sri Lanka off the list and have a look at Thailand. And Thailand is a lot better because they started improving access a long time ago. And even Vietnam now is catching up with Thailand. But, you know, in 2018, I thought, no, my heart is with Sri Lanka. I'm going to do whatever I can to improve access and promote it to the public in Europe and the UK.
Okay, sir. So thank you so much for your ideas, and you gave some answers for our second question as well. So we thought of asking your comparison, like comparatively to other countries, how Sri Lanka should develop the our facilities and other amenities for the accessible tourism. So actually how it should be developed furthermore, because you've done your the promotions and all like more than 20 years now, and from today onwards, so future should our future should be like promoting much more tourism, accessible tourism facilities.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, there are various policies that if I was in government, thankfully I'm not, I would start an advertising campaign showing, you don't need to show someone in a wheelchair at Sigiriya or in Anuradhapura or Kandy. You can show a group of people, so able-bodied and a wheelchair user together in the same picture. So you shouldn't just focus on the disabled person, because you are promoting inclusivity. So the companies, the marketing companies, hotels, restaurants, they need to understand that a disabled person very rarely travels on their own. So why should you show a picture of someone in a wheelchair looking at Anuradhapura? You should show disabled person in the wheelchair with their family, because you know it's if you own a hotel and you can't accommodate a wheelchair user, you are more than often turning away not only that wheelchair user, but his wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, children. So it's a lot of money that you're turning away. So I would start with a marketing campaign to promote inclusivity, I would also, going on to the government, I would try and apply for funding. The EU will give you funding, will give a country funding to make their tourist facilities accessible. So, for example, Lebanon applied for EU funding. They got the funding, and consequently, they made all their tourist destinations, locations, accessible as they can. So the government should look at something like that, some kind of outside funding. Also, they should introduce importing accessibility products. There is tax. The government should do away with that tax, because I was thinking maybe it would be cheaper and easier to import a wheelchair accessible taxi from the UK or from Thailand or even India into Sri Lanka. But even doing that, there would be 100% import tax. So the government should have a look at their fiscal, give some kind of tax breaks or get rid of import tax altogether on accessibility products. So I think the also promoting a disability equality or developing a disability equality training course such as what you plan to do, that would be ideal, because I've been to many hotels, not just in Sri Lanka, but all over the world, where, because I'm in a wheelchair, hotel staff are often afraid to come up to me and ask me if I'm okay. And they've been afraid because disability in some countries is a taboo subject, and seeing a disabled person on their own in the street or in a hotel or restaurant is an alien concept for them. So by giving training to hotel staff, they will feel comfortable coming up to a disabled person and asking if they're okay, if they need any help. And of course, if a wheelchair user comes back from a holiday and they've had fantastic customer service, they will tell their friends, they'll put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram, and they'll say, yeah, Sri Lanka is fantastic. Accessibility is improving, but the service I got in Hotel X was amazing. I fully recommend it. So really, it's there are so many things that can be done by the government, but I also find that dealing with companies, companies are often quicker to embrace the concept of accessibility doesn't mean more costs. Accessibility is a way of generating more income.
Thank you so much, sir. And we have a question from the audience. Lahir is asking you, sir, can you please briefly explain what sort of medical emergencies or travel difficulties frequently occurring for the differently able travelers? And by comparing with your travel experiences, you may answer for this question, sir.
Yeah, right. Well, like I say, whenever I go on holiday, I book everything myself. So I go on to the Sri Lankan Airlines, book the air ticket, contact the hotel, and find out if there is an accessible bedroom. If not, I'll move on to the next hotel, try and find out if that hotel is accessible. And I would say, and speaking with other disabled people, the research spent on finding an accessible hotel is the most time-consuming part of booking a holiday. So going back to your previous question, maybe the government should have a database of accessible hotels. And I mean, hotels in the UK and Europe actively advertise that they are accessible. So you click onto a hotel website in the UK and you will see a disability logo. So you know immediately that there are disabled rooms in that hotel. And it's, there are facilities for hearing impairments, people who are visually impaired, wheelchair mobility impairments. So I think hotels need to advertise their accessibility more than what they do in Sri Lanka. Then I think the second biggest problem we have, or I have in my case, is finding a wheelchair accessible vehicle. So, for example, if I went to America, America has fleets of wheelchair accessible vehicles. Same in Europe, but if I go to Thailand in my electric wheelchair, I'm stuck really because there aren't that many taxis that take an electric wheelchair. So, and likewise, in Cambodia, Vietnam is getting better, but I think after hotels, trying to find whether or not there are wheelchair accessible taxis is a problem, because it's fine getting to the airport, eventually getting to the hotel, but if you can't go anywhere when you're in that hotel, it's not really a holiday, is it? So I would say hotel, transport, and in my case, wheelchair accessible tourist locations. They're the three main biggest problems that I encounter. But having said that, I am very stubborn, and if someone says, "Oh, wheelchair can't go down there," I'll ignore them and try and get down there, even if it is dangerous.
Right, Mr. James, thank you so much for valuable ideas, and we highly appreciate your participation for this webinar. And because you know that there are 2 countries, 2 different time zones, and thank you so much again. And we will be heading forward to contact you more and more when we are doing this project furthermore. Thank you so much, sir. And Thank you. And my dear ladies and gentlemen, we are recording 100 participants for this webinar, and continuously we are having lots of questions from you. Thank you so much for your valuable active participation. And we will be heading to collect all these questions. And when we are doing all the process, we will be keeping our consideration to take your new ideas for these sections, promotions and development. Thank you so much. And dear all, we are moving to the final part of this discussion, and I'm happy to invite the third resource person for this webinar, the General Manager of Hilton Yala Resort, Ms. Gitanjali Chakravarthy. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Sri.
Okay, so ma'am, as the final part of our webinar, we are moving to the differently able guest handling education. So as the first question of ours, we would like to ask, why do you think the differently able guest handling knowledge and the practice is essential for the hotel sector and the tourism sector employees, as well as the students who are studying the hospitality management?
All right. Thank you, Sri, for that question, and good afternoon to everyone. Now, before I answer your question, I would like to talk a little bit about the accessible tourism. Just as Ms. Kimarli Fernando mentioned earlier, it's basically making our tourist destinations or the products and the services that we offer to people, or make it accessible to everyone, regardless their physical limitations, could be disabilities, or maybe it could be the age. And sometimes it also can be like the affordability and the possibility to visit a certain place. But today, since our focus is mainly on differently able, I will talk more about what is expected from hotel operations to facilitate like the needs of guests with special needs or guests with disabilities. Now, tourism, as we all know, it's a rapidly increasing industry, and increasingly, it's like there's a demand for the tourists with different abilities or differently able people. And this is a very timely time to discuss a topic which is as accessible tourism, right? And Sri Lanka, as you all know, is yet to tap this market. And yet we know that the number of people with disabilities is increasing day by day, and it has become a very attractive market globally. And many hotels do cater to guests with different abilities, but still we lack in that area, and we need to work on it very actively, as we have to look at it as a very big or a great business opportunity. Because some of the research studies show that 15% of the world population, that's close to about 1 million, live with some kind of a disability. And in 2050, the size of the senior citizens will be increased just as twice as today. So this means it's going to open up more opportunities for hotels to attract people with disabilities, because they will not stop traveling, right? And some countries are even coming up with laws to be able to support people who travel with disabilities. Like one of those is the American Disability Act. Now, one of the SDGs also, like Sustainable Development Goal 11, supports cities and sustainable cities and communities. So there's so much focus given onto accessible tourism, right? So as I told you before, so it's a very timely topic that we have selected. And to answer to your question on the knowledge that the frontline staff should have, right, they should be, first of all, trained, and they should be capable of informing the guests about the accessible facilities even before they make a booking with a hotel. Right? So they need to understand, be it if they work for front office or reservations, they should be knowledgeable about the offerings that the hotel will offer. And at the same time, the teams have to ensure that the websites are updated. That's a big, biggest issue that we see really. Websites are not user-friendly, they're not updated with the offerings that we have. So the hotel team should ensure that the websites are updated. And once a guest arrives in the destination, the first impression is at the airport or the guest pickup. Now, when we are handling disabled guests, obviously we've been communicating with them. We know what their expectations and the needs are. So the frontline staff will have to be ready with the needs of the guests, probably by communicating with the guests in advance, and have things like wheelchairs if the guest needs, or crutches, or sometimes baby seats ready when they go to pick these guests. I have experienced there had been times where drivers go to the airport to pick a family with infants or little babies, but with no car seat. So although in Sri Lanka, this may not be a requirement, most of the guests who travel here, they would not want to have a young kid in the car without a car seat. So these are the basic things that the staff should be aware of. And then also once they come to the hotel, or even before they come, assigning proper accessible rooms is important. And to ensure that all the public spaces, restaurants are also easily accessible. And they should be aware of all the facilities and the services, and about the tourist attractions, what are the areas that can be visited, what are the areas that cannot be visited by guests with certain disabilities. Now, if they are not aware, they may not be able to share the right information with the guests, which will definitely make the guests frustrated and unhappy. Because obviously, as Mrs. Fernando previously mentioned, CDA is one of the areas that may not be able to be accessible by all the guests with different disabilities. And again, the team should remember, to offer help, but also at the same time to respect guests who do not require assistance. Although a person is disabled, they may sometimes refuse assistance. So the staff or our team members should be trained in order to stay away from such guests and only offer assistance when needed. Because we Sri Lankans are very hospitable. Sometimes we may try to go out of our way and help. It may come across as a negative activity by our people. Now, in order to be knowledge, in addition to the knowledge that they should have, our team members, if we are to cater to this disabled group, should have certain attributes. Right now, without being asked for, we should be able to look at the guest and identify what the guest requires. So it's very necessary to be proactive and also to be patient. And we should be able to willingly help them when necessary. And also to be conscious, because people with different abilities may become aggressive at times. So we as hotel staff should be able to handle those behaviors of guests. And also when a disabled guest, for that matter, any guest, asks for something, we should be able to promptly and efficiently offer services, because it can really upset a guest when he or she is unable to do her own thing, and if there is help requested and the help does not come on time, it can be really frustrating. And also we have to understand, as hotel employees, guests with different abilities don't work at the same pace as we do. So we need to be extremely patient, talk to them very clearly, slowly, and always use calm voices. So this actually comes with very training in those areas. And a factor that has to be remembered is we have to empathize with guests, but never sympathize with them, because they don't expect our sympathy. Right? And even in using words, we have to be very careful, be sensitive, and so that we don't offend anyone. And all this actually comes with proper training. I hope I have answered your question, Shri.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. And ma'am, we have we know that this topic is very rarely discussed. And ma'am, from your point of view, what are the main gaps of employees and the students' knowledge, and what are the gaps that we have seen in the education on differently able guest handling?
Okay, undoubtedly there are gaps, because this is a new market to us, although few people travel. So there is a lot that we need to learn. And there are no formal schools or formal courses as of now in the hotel schools where they teach students how to handle people with different abilities. But as we understand that there is a big demand for this market segment, we need to introduce certain courses. Right now, what we can teach our employees or team members in hotels, even before Hospitality Institute comes up with different courses, is basically trying to give them a knowledge about what kind of facilities hotels need in order to cater to this segment of people. Now, the basic thing is having these rooms with disability. Now, there's a standard in some countries, every 200 rooms should have 3 rooms for disabled people. And in Sri Lanka, as far as I remember, for every 100 rooms, there is a requirement to have 2 rooms as rooms for disabled people. So our infrastructure has to be right. And sometimes, like recently, again, I read an article where in Japan, when they build hotels, they don't build rooms for disabled people. They build rooms which are suitable for disabled people, where even a person with normal abilities can stay in such rooms. So we don't have to pay much attention to get things like flooring done up properly or having grab rails. Grab rails are needed even for like elderly people. They may not be having a disability, but their age requires that they hold on to a grab rail in the shower when they otherwise they could slip and fall. So when the hotels are built, if we can incorporate those few features so that rooms can be quickly converted to be rooms suitable for disabled people rather than having just 2 rooms, because if this market is going to grow and expand, it's important to have more than 2 rooms in a hotel to be able to cater to the demand. So, hotel employees should be knowledgeable as to what is needed in their guest rooms, and at the same time, maybe learn sign languages. Maybe there are a few people who knows the sign language. I surely don't know, being a hotelier, but it's worthwhile looking at learning sign language if you are, again, to cater to people with disabilities. And also skills training. Right? Disability also could be related to dietary requirements, where the hotel staff should know how to prepare certain dishes or menus to be able to cater to the demands of guests with different eating habits. And maybe for visually impaired people, having braille menus. And also we could think of, not only the hotel staff should know exactly what is required by the guests who are disabled, but at the time that the hotels are being built, if the hotel owners can incorporate all the facilities that are being needed by a disabled guest, right, that this will make sure that we don't exclude anyone despite of physical limitations of people. And just as I told you before, some of the things that we can focus is hard floors, safety rails, then motorized like drapes, so that you don't have to go to a drape to pull that down, but instead you have a remote control. And quite wide hallways can be another thing. And also, as Mr. James said, that the room was cluttered with furniture, and then he didn't have space for his wheelchair. So obviously, rooms for disability, guests with disabilities should have less furniture in the room so that a wheelchair can maneuver very easily. And obviously, these rooms that we build in hotels have to be on a ground floor, and if we not, we need to have elevators. But having said that, I have worked in certain hotels which caters to this segment, but unfortunately have a restaurant on the upper floor, and there is no elevator. So we need to think, even way before we build hotels, we need to understand, are we building the infrastructure in a manner which is user-friendly for a guest who is on a wheelchair or differently able. So this is what I have to say about what the hotels can really do in order to cater to the demands of disabled guests.
Right, ma'am. Thank you. And dear ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement for you. So if you would like to get logged in with the Facebook Live that we have launched now, so you can just get logged with the University of Colombo alumni Facebook page, as well as Travel Voice Facebook page. You can just check with them, and you can get have a look later as well. Ma'am, I'm moving to the third question that we have listed out for you. And do you think this improvement of the accessible tourism education would be benefit for development and the promoting the medical tourism and the wellness tourism in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, definitely, because medical tourism and wellness tourism also can be for the guests with certain disabilities. So improving or giving more access to disabled guests will also open up opportunities for people to travel for medical tourism and also for wellness tourism. There are some hotels who are already offering wellness tourism, But as I told you before, people have to be properly educated, because right now in our hotels, we haven't given formal education in or skills in handling disabled guests. Our students or our employees in hotels will have to understand basically what disability means. It could be an impairment or a disability, right? And then we also have to at the same time understand the importance of disabled customers in tourism, how important these customers are to tourism and the revenue that they can bring in. And at the same time, if a country is catering to guests with disabilities, we have to be, our team members have to be aware of the laws governing the guests with disabilities. Otherwise, probably we can get into trouble. We can be sued by guests if we do the wrong thing in handling their needs, right? So when you say understanding specific disabilities, it could be the ability of impairment, right, which also has difficulties in learning. It could be a hearing impairment or a visual or a mobility impairment. It could be anything. So it's very important for our team members to understand what the issue that the guest is having, and then like customize our services based on the guest requirement. And also they need to have the language which is appropriate to talk to, or use the correct terminology is important. And effective communication can be something that we can educate people with, and to help them improve their listening skills is very important when handling disabled guests, because we need to first listen to them to understand what their need is, and then based on that we cater to their demands. And again, another important thing that I could think of is like when we are dealing with disabled guests, we should be able to control our own emotions, our own feelings, and we should not be biased in serving disabled guests. Now, since this is something very new to us, we should train people, or we should make people aware to control our own emotions, not to feel sorry, because obviously when the person is traveling on holiday, he wants to be happy. He's not worried about his own disability. So we shouldn't feel sorry for that person and like be emotional about it. Right? So our staff needs to be trained in that as well. And the staff should be knowledgeable about the attractions, the transports that these guests can use while they're here. And exactly, they have to know what facilities and equipment are being used for the disabled guests and how to use them. It can be very frustrating for a disabled guest to call someone and to understand that person or the hotel employee does not know how certain equipment work. So these are the areas that can be incorporated into training when we are trying to get our team members or students of certain institutions trained in to be able to handle guests with different like differently able guests or people with special needs.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And we are totally agree with your ideas, because we know that how much these areas should be discussed furthermore, and how much it should be taken into the consideration when it comes to the education. Even the hotel schools, universities, we know that we have lots of degree programs related to the hospitality management. So these things should be discussed furthermore. And ma'am, we've got a question. We picked one question from the audience, and Yasit was asking, what would be your suggestion to improve the employees and students' first aid knowledge and the communication skills with the differently able guests?
Right now, as you know, hotels have training managers, but they are not trained in handling disabled guests, nor do they know sign languages. So my suggestion would be for hotels, if they are actively trying to look at this new market, to get expertise in those areas. There are schools where they teach sign language. So to get an expert to teach the language. But handling training ourselves who are like qualified in hospitality may not be ideal, because we may not give the right training that is required to handle guests with disabilities. But having said that, communication, empathy, or using appropriate language, not the sign language, but the appropriate language which does not make people feel offensive, is something that the hotel managers or the training and development managers can put together.
Right, ma'am. Thank you so much again for your valuable time and valuable ideas. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everything will be keeping in touch for the development of our sector, because now we are in the new normal situation, and we are facing and we are trying to have a boost in our tourism and hospitality trade in coming future. So therefore these things will be discussed furthermore, and you can log in with the Facebook live with those pages in University of Colombo as well as the other pages. So therefore I would like to thank you. So thank you to all the resource persons like Ms. Kimarli Fernando, Chairperson of Sri Lanka Tourism, and Mr. James Exton, the CEO of Access the Globe, as well as the Hilton Yala General Manager, Ms. Gitanjali Chakravarthy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to conclude the session. So thank you so much again for your participation, all the participants and the responders. Thanks again for your positive and very active interactions. So we'll be keeping your questions and your ideas with us for your further processing and all. And let me tell our ultimate goal. So this project will be the initiative project, the flagship project, because we are continuing this furthermore, and we will be publishing few newspaper articles as well, especially in national newspapers, English and single medium. So therefore you can get reached with them as well. And as the final and ultimate target of this session, so we will be developing a module for differently able guest handling education. So this will be a turning point of hospitality management education. So we are touching a very new segment. So it will be, this project will be ended up with like a training program with the developed module. So it will be surely launched in near future. And finally, I would like to invite Yashoda Vidanagamge, one of my colleagues, and she will be doing the vote of thanks to mark the end of this session. Thank you so much. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Shri. Uh, Good evening to everyone. I'm Yasoda. So I'm here to present the vote of thanks. First, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our resource persons, Ms. Kimarli Fernando, Chairperson of Sri Lanka Tourism, Mr. James Exton, CEO, Access the Globe, and Ms. Gitanjali Chakravarthy, General Manager, Hilton Yala Resort, for joining us with today and enlightening us with your valuable knowledge. And second, I would like to thank Professor Suranga Silva for his guidance. Sir, without you, this would not be possible at all.
Thank you.
And third, I'm grateful for our university staff and our 2020 batch mates and also the participants for all their supports and all of their valuable questions and inputs. And especially I would thank our Alumni Association of Tourism, Economics and Hospitality Management for their University of Colombo for their wonderful support. And finally, I'm really thankful for my team members for doing such a great work. So I believe that today's webinar was full of knowledge and interesting thoughts and things. So I'm pretty sure the precious knowledge that we gained today would definitely would be help Sri Lanka to become a world-known destination for accessible tourism. So that's it. Thank you very much. Over to Nipuni.
Thank you very much, Kalpani. And as we all told that we believe that it will be a very fruitful session for you all, even though it is a short session. We believe that it's very informative for all of us. So we have come to the conclusion of our webinar, and thank you everybody for your valuable participation. We'll definitely meet you all soon with the developed module to train the hospitality employees of Sri Lanka. And till that, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you very much.